Hello to the HCI community. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm pleased to be here this afternoon on good old St. Patrick's Day. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, the joys of employee engagement and why you should start now. To Randy's point, please feel free to participate for any social butterflies out there. If you hear any good thoughts or see any good stats, we would love for you to participate on Twitter with our hashtag GDChat. And what we'll plan to cover today is really kind of go into why employee engagement matters, starting with what is it, how do you define or begin to categorize engagement of your employees. Then we've compiled some of our best tips that we internally use at Glassdoor to engage our employees and most importantly monitor their engagement and how it changes over time. Then we'll recap with a few quick key takeaways, and to Randy's point, loop back for some Q&A for any questions that have come in during the discussion. So to start, let's kind of circle back on why employee engagement matters. You know, we hear this term more and more, especially with the rise of new titles like VP of People or Director of Employee Engagement. You know, what does this really mean, and why is it something that we need to be mindful of? And what we've seen is that retention and engagement have actually risen to number 2 in the mind of business leaders, only second to the challenge of building global leadership and a global impact. So it's really top of mind, but today we kind of want to evaluate and peel back the layers as to what that means, how to define these employees, and what sort of impact can this have on your business profitability, the inner workings, all of that good stuff. So let's dive in. When we were talking about this topic internally, we were kind of scratching our heads. You know, how do we even begin to define an engaged employee? Sure, it means they like what they do and they're happy to go to work every day. But, you know, there isn't really one cut and dry way to categorize these employees. But from our research, we really kind of decided that it truly comes down to the relationship between the employee and his or her organization. We see this as an employee who's fully absorbed in his or her work, is enthusiastic about it, is personally invested not only in his or her own success in their role, but as the company overall. You know, is the company going above and beyond? Is the company growing? Do our customers like the product or the services that we're selling? Do your employees believe in the mission? Can they stand behind what they do? Are they passionate about what they do? And one of the most interesting things we found is that emotional commitment, that it's not just going through the motions. It really has to do with their well-being and their, personal recognition of themselves. Do they like what they're doing? How does it make them feel internally? And I'll start by saying, yes, it might come across as a little bit lofty. And how can you even begin to kind of quantify employee engagement? And, to my earlier point, I don't know if there is a cut and dry way, but in today's session, we will be going into some ways that you can start to set a baseline and kind of measure where your employees are and use some levers at your disposal to actually increase engagement throughout your organization. So taking this a step further, we see employees as sort of 3 levels of engagement. One, we've got your engaged employees. These are the people who are passionate about what they're doing. They're excited about their work. They're fully engrossed in the company's success, in their team. They feel personally responsible to drive innovation, to come up with great ideas, to share those great ideas and move the company forward. Then we look to the not engaged. I hate to say it, but we've all probably had this at one time in our lives, or will, unfortunately, one time in our careers, where you just feel a little checked out. You're burnt out. Maybe you're just going through the motions. You're completing your task, but there's no real kind of vibrance behind that, and you're just feeling a little bit uninspired. Maybe you don't have all the support you need. Maybe you feel that your manager isn't fully supportive of your success. And then we look to the far right. No one ever wants to be here. And this is really those actively disengaged people. They just don't want to go to work in the morning. They're unhappy with their job they're doing. They, feel that maybe they've given up in a way. They possibly could begin to almost act out and undermine the success or the work being done by their team or by their management. So there's really a big scale here, and obviously, probably at any given time during our career, maybe when we're leaving a job or we're starting a new job, I think it's natural that we sort of fluctuate between these. Hopefully more in the left two rather than the right, but I think we're human, and this is a normal thing, and so it's important to kind of know those different stages and where your employees are and how you can begin to shift them more to the left and sort of mitigate ones that are in the right. And kind of going back on that, I think of a funny example here. I don't know whoever has seen that movie Office Space in the early 90s, but you think back to those employees and some that loved their career, felt so good about what they were doing, and then you had kind of these main characters who just were completely disengaged and were looking at ways to kind of undermine the company. So I just thought that was kind of a funny example of kind of the ranges of disengagement. So what we want to do, obviously, as a company and brand leaders, is build in-house advocates. So a lot of this starts from home, your home being your employees, the people that support the work that you're doing every day. And we see this as, your reputation matters, especially when it comes to how you treat and engage your employees. We've seen that while 90% of executives understand how important employee engagement is, less than 50% are able to understand how to address this issue. They might notice, that employees are disengaged or acting out or missing deadlines or just have lost that spark, but they don't know where to start. So you're not alone if you're kind of in that boat. So there's two ways of thought. If you're an established company, why care now? Why is it important to sort of build employee engagement programs? You have people coming in and out, they're doing their job, your company's growing. So why kind of be mindful of this now? On the other hand, if you're a fast-growing company, you should be especially mindful of this. How can you build brand ambassadors? How can you introduce new employees to your company on the right foot? How can you make sure they have the tools in place to be successful and hopefully be brand advocates? In doing a lot of research for this presentation, we found a few stats that we thought were particularly important. One of which is that companies with employee engagement programs, the companies who have actually taken time to invest in this, to evaluate what their employee sentiment is, they outperform over a year by 26%. So about 26% growth every year the more they invest in these programs, which I think is pretty exciting. And it basically shows that, employee engagement and how engrossed your employees are in your business's success, it pays off. Flipping to the next slide, this is actually research that we had done internally at Glassdoor. For those of you who are familiar, we do a study once a year in December called Our Best Places to Work. It's a list where we basically look at all the data on Glassdoor, and we publish a list of those companies, those 50 companies, small, large, across the pond in the UK, that are doing an exceptional job. Employees love where they work. They respect the leadership. They feel inspired. They respond to the mission. And we wanted to see how that actually impacts your bottom line. Does being a great place to work with engaged employees actually pay off? And we partnered with our chief economist, Andrew Chamberlain, and he actually did a whole study that compared what we had deemed our best places to work versus companies that had lower engagement, lower satisfaction, lower ratings of their executive leadership. And we saw that those best places to work outperformed by over 120% compared to lower rated companies with lower engagement, had underperformed by nearly 30. So just looking at it to scale, this is incredible. These companies that focus on people first, making sure your people have the tools, the resources, the insight, the support to be successful definitely pays off. So now that we've kind of painted the picture of what it means to be engaged, how it can actually impact your business overall, Where do you start? What are the levers that you have at your disposal to begin to start measuring, monitoring, and increasing engagement at your company? So what I want to do here is show a study that we captured from Deloitte, where they actually did another study on sort of employee engagement. What drives engagement at all sizes of organizations? And what we found is it kind of comes down to pretty simple ideas. The 5 being meaningful work, hands-on management, a positive work environment, a place where they can grow their career, and lastly, their belief and trust in their senior leadership. So I'm going to peel these apart a bit. So when it comes to meaningful work, ask yourselves, do your employees like what they're doing? Did the role they accept, are they able to do the work that they were brought on to do, or were they doing something completely different? Are they doing challenging work? Do they have the resources and tools to be successful? If they ask for help, do they get it? Do they know where to go for help? Do they have the right people on your teams working together? How are those personalities aligned? Are they able to handle conflict well? Are they able to have fun, to kind of take a load off and maybe get lunch together and kind of build relationships that go beyond just the day-to-day project list? When it comes to hands-on management, do your managers and leaders have the support they need to be effective? Do they know how their leadership or management style is received to their subordinates? Do your teams know what they're working towards? Are their managers transparent about what goals are they working towards? What are some of the failures that maybe have happened, and what is your team doing to fix those? Even as a manager, being able to answer the simple question, are you doing a good job, or are there areas for improvement? It's very frustrating to be in a position where you're doing your work and that feedback loop, there is none. You don't know, is the work you're being done well received? Is it making an impact? Or are you far off target? So part of that really sits in the manager, him or herself. Moving on to positive work environment. Can't stress this one enough. Personal comfort is so important, and that goes beyond just the seat you're sitting in or the ergonomics of your desk. This really goes beyond how you treat your employees. Are they shunned for leaving early one afternoon to go to a doctor's appointment? Is there a personal space for new mothers to go and take a break when they need to? Do you have a culture where employees are recognized when they go above and beyond? Do you have a culture that embraces feedback or embraces conflict resolution? So that there's not sort of passive aggressive behavior. I know at Glassdoor, we're such a feedback-rich culture, and we make it a point for all new employees, our leaders included, to give feedback, to have those tough conversations so that we're able to grow as employees, grow as teams, and be more effective. Another one here is diversity. This goes beyond just race and gender, but this is really, even tenure. How do the older tenured employees, do you have women engineers or women sales representatives, or is it an all-boys club? Starting to look at those different things and see what trends you have, and maybe incorporate new personalities and new people to make those teams more effective. Moving on to growth opportunities. We'll see in a few slides how important career opportunities really can be to drive engagement, but ask yourselves, is your company a place where employees see a future? Is it a company that's going places, that has a mission, that has a vision that's taking them globally, taking them bigger? Are they inspired to ask the questions, what tools do I need to be effective? Are your employees constantly learning? Are they given opportunities to learn? When they have questions, are they being able to answer those or get the help they need? And lastly, trust and leadership. This is, again, another vital part of driving overall engagement. No surprise here. It really does stem from the top. Do your employees believe in who is leading your company? Do they believe in the mission that those leaders are preaching out? Are Are your leaders being honest about where they're headed, what those goals are? Are they also being honest about where you maybe missed the mark? Are they being honest about what they're asking your teams to accomplish, or even just saying, hey, you might have 3 key goals for the year, and how do I, as a marketer, how am I contributing to those goals? How do I fit a part into that big mission? So what we wanted to do now is kind of shift gears and actually go into 4 tips that we felt you can engage now, that you can start from within and turn things around and actually begin to measure and improve your employee engagement and satisfaction. So tip number 1, feedback. You have to ask. You can't just assume your employees feel a certain way. You have to ask them, and that can even increase engagement right there. How good have you felt when someone asks for your opinion and they listen and they respond to it? So a lot of this just starts with getting that baseline, asking for the feedback. Employees can feel that they have a suggestion box, per se, where they can actually be honest, be transparent, and know that their feedback will be heard. And this is so important, and the way that we solicit feedback has changed. There's so many tools now, Glassdoor included, where you can, at any time, at any place, provide feedback. What are the pros, the cons? What advice do you have? What do you wish was different? There's plenty of free tools. There's SurveyMonkey, there's Waggle, there's so many other tools out there that you can keep it anonymous. And at Glassdoor, we've found that to be particularly important. If you're going to ask someone for candid feedback and you really want the truth, make sure that they know it's anonymous. Or if you ask them to identify themselves, know that that they'll be well received and they won't be punished for being honest. You want that transparency. So to start, you do need to set that baseline. So inviting them to participate in feedback is the first step, and that really can be used to see sort of by department, maybe by satellite office, overall, where your employees fall. Are newer employees more engaged than more tenured employees, or so on? And a big way to create trust with your organization is to keep this dialogue regular. Don't just ask for the feedback and never ask for it again. Incorporate this into your day-to-day. Maybe you can start with an anonymous survey or poll and refresh it every 6 months so that you kind of have a regular view into where your employees are. You can use Glassdoor data on your company to identify trends and to sort of monitor where your employees are. There's a ton of ways for you to kind of split the pros, the cons, see how those differ between departments, between offices, even between your interview candidates, and sort of use that to sort of set a baseline. And I can't stress this enough that if you ask employees to provide feedback, whether that be submitting a Glassdoor review, submitting an anonymous survey, filling out a poll, even filling out a paper and pen suggestion box, you have to respond. There's nothing worse than sort of being asked for your opinion, asked for your feedback, and just feeling like it went nowhere, like no one read it or no one heard it. And what we've seen in our research is that nearly 62% of users agree that their perception improves actually, after they see an employer respond to a review. Even if it's a bad review, the fact that the employer acknowledged, said, thank you, I appreciate your feedback, we've heard it, it means something to us, it's valuable, it really sends a positive message. And you can use all those reviews to create actionable insights. So one of the ways you can do this is group the good, the bad, the ugly, and be transparent about it, where you acknowledge you have some areas for improvement, what you're doing exceptionally well, and why you're proud of those certain things. And what I wanted to do was actually kind of give you guys an insight into how we do it at Glassdoor to hopefully inspire some practices on your end. We believe that feedback is vital to our success. and it starts from the very beginning. We ask that all of our new hires submit a review. How was your interview experience? What went well? What didn't go so well? What could we do better? Then we remind them at the 6-month moment to write a review. You've been here for a while. What do you like? What don't you like? What is your advice to your leadership team? One thing that we do that I think is really powerful and brave, if I do say so myself, is that at every all-hands meeting, which we have bi-weekly, our CEO will stand up in front of the group and acknowledge some of the feedback that comes in. We'll answer some of the questions that have been submitted anonymously. We'll kind of take the stand in a way to say, look, maybe this is our goal and we went above and beyond. Or, hey, we didn't quite make it, and here's why. Or, here we've gotten some feedback around diversity per se, and here's what we're doing to address it. And just being open and honest and accepting that feedback was submitted and acknowledging it and answering the questions or acknowledging it or coming up with new plans to fix it, I think is really important and can be adapted across any and all size organizations. What we also do is we encourage department leaders to work with their team to solicit feedback. So we constantly ask that, hey, if there's things we could be doing better as leaders, let us know. We will also send company-wide emails every now and then to solicit that feedback on Glassdoor. We're also hang posters and stickers around the office. Let us know, what are we doing? What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? So it really stems from the top. Our leadership team is involved. Our department leaders are involved. Our new hires are involved in sort of communicating where they are and what they like. Switching gears to tip number 2. This is a really interesting one. Rallying behind your mission and your goals. So not just stemming from the actual top of your organization, but the actual foundation. Why are you here today? What is it that your company is striving for? How are they trying to make the world a better place? And sometimes just being able to get your people on the same page about what your mission is, what your core values are, and how does that improve the greater good, and how do your employees play a part in achieving that mission can be so powerful in keeping them engaged. And part of this can be keeping the lines of communication open. So make it clear from day one how employees are contributing to that mission. I mentioned in the last slide that our leader will stand up in front of the crowd and be transparent about what's our mission, to help people everywhere find a job in a company they love. But what are our key objectives for the quarter? What are we striving for as an organization, so that everyone knows how they fit into that, by department, by role, by individual. We revisit those goals regularly. I mentioned that, sometimes we're honest about what went well, what didn't, and what are we working to fix, and how those goals and our objectives and the day-to-day that we're striving for matters to the overall mission. And I think sometimes that, look, things happen in business. You might change focus, or you might steer in a different direction, but giving employees insight into why you're making those changes, or why you might potentially ask them to drop one project and start another. Being clear about why that matters and what they're helping to achieve really can increase their engagement. They feel invested. They feel responsible for supporting those objectives. And what we've seen is that only 51% of companies even attempt to develop aligned goals. And what I mean is goals aligned to sort of the top line, stemming down to the worker bees per se. And among these, only 6% regularly revisit them. And companies that revisit goals quarterly have threefold greater improvement in performance than those who only revisit goals yearly. So I ask you I encourage you, be brave, be transparent. Let your employees know, what are they working for? What's the overall picture? Where's the target? And if the target moves, why is it moving? And, how is the individual work that they're doing helping to achieve those new goals? And what we've seen is that benefits from mission-driven employees can be pretty powerful. We've seen that 30% higher levels of innovation and 40% higher levels of retention. When employees feel that they have a role in the mission and creating a successfully hitting that mission, it can really impact your organization. So what we do at Glassdoor to sort of communicate our mission is we say it all the time. We make sure in every company, all hands, we repeat our mission. We start with our mission. It's kind of like our lifeblood in a certain way. We have quarterly business reviews where all of our teams, every department, what goes over what worked well, what didn't work so well, how are we pivoting for next quarter, what are our goals for next quarter, have they changed, and if they have, why have they changed, why are we making those changes? At our mission, we believe that community matters, and we want everyone to feel that they love where they work and they love the company that they're working for. So we've even started our own brand ambassadors. So we have a culture club that will come up with new ways to live and breathe Glassdoor, whether it's a fun committee that puts on fun events, or it's a culture club learning to adapting our culture and seeing how new employees respond to that. We also have a Give 1% program, this community door, as I've outlined on the slide. Basically, we encourage our employees to find something that they're passionate about, whether it's the local ASPCA or, a homeless shelter that they want to dedicate some time because it's something they're passionate about. We will give them paid time leave for 1 to 2 days a year to go and support that cause. We believe in them. We want our employees to feel empowered to do those things and be part of the community and love where they work. We also have one that's relatively new, which is our Coding After School program. This is particularly interesting, and we thought that helping people find a job and company they love starts from when you're a kid. We thought that if we can inspire kids to find and pursue a career that they love, that they'll be happier overall, and they're going to be next generation's leaders. So we've created a new program that I believe it's once a quarter. We invite kids from the local community to come and learn to code. It might sound a little boring, but we've turned it into this really fun and engaging activity. It's a way to connect with the community, make our employees feel that we're doing something above and beyond just the day-to-day, that we're actually inspiring the future of the future leaders, the future engineers. Moving on to tip 3, supporting work-life integration. So you notice I didn't use the common phrase work-life balance, and that's because I think we're going through a shift right now. We're technically always on. With the availability of our mobile devices, Wi-Fi internet everywhere we go, we have access to work even when we go home for the day. So this is more about enabling your employees to work and enjoy their life in a way that works for them. Part of what we believe is that you should focus on your people. Enable and trust them to get the work done when and where, in whatever fashion will work for them. And what we've seen is that the demand for talent is now outpacing the available candidates. So the power has shifted. Employees have a lot of options on where they can work. So they're going to pick the place that gives them the best work-life integration, that allows them to be them, to get their work done, to be inspired, but also knows that they want to have a life too. And what we've seen from a quote from Josh Bersin is that the balance of power has shifted from employer to employee. And now that these organizations who are engaging employees need to be passionate, need to be creative contributors, and that they acknowledge that and they embrace a culture where employees can be just that. And breaking that down a little bit further, we think that flexibility and accountability matters. So what does that mean? That means allowing your employees to be human and treat them as humans, the golden rule. If you need to be able to leave early to attend a dentist appointment, or you need to take a day off because you're feeling under the weather, that you would expect your employees want those same things too. And modern life is complicated, and people need to leave early to pick up their children, or they need to be able to travel and be able to work while on the road. So part of this is peer-to-peer accountability, enabling your employees to work remote, to have the tools and the resources they need to work when and where it's convenient for them. And one way to do this too is if you hired someone to do the job, so show them that you trust them to do the job in a way that suits them. Allow for that autonomy. People want to be able to have ownership, a sense of pride in what they're doing. So don't micromanage or build policies with the worst case scenarios in mind. Give people the tools up front to be successful and let them do their job. And with that regular feedback loop and management relationships is you can identify, do they have the tools they need? Are they being effective? Are there ways that they could be improving? And at Glassdoor, we like to think that we've kind of redefined the 9-to-5 work case scenario. We offer flexible work time and remote options. In fact, we just opened 2 new remote offices. So with that comes new challenges of keeping those employees engaged. We kind of have to shift the times that we do our all-hands meetings. We need to enable those employees to be remote and still feel included in the company culture. We think that part of that work-life integration is health and wellness. Is there a way that you can relieve stress at the office, that you can get a workout in? Are you allowed to go for a walk when you need to clear your head? Can you do a walking one-on-one with your manager? We also believe that recognition of successes is so important. We do this fun thing every month with our sales and marketing team called BAMF, and stands for Best Achievement Made by Friday. And it's kind of just a funny, informal event that we do, and we anonymously submit votes on who went above and beyond that week, who closed an amazing deal, or who launched an incredible campaign, or who truly went above and beyond to support another employee. And it's just a fun way to share those votes, laugh, have a beer, a slice of pizza, and just kind of relish in all the successes and the great teams that we've put in place. And I think one here too is team building offsites. Sometimes breaking down those walls and increasing engagement means outside of the office. And I'm not saying these need to be week-long Hawaii adventures. It can be really easy things where you just get to know your employees on a more personal level. You start to understand what motivates them, what drives them. Are they happy in what they're doing? And it really shows you as an employer that as employees, that your employer cares about them, that cares about their well-being and their happiness. And examples of this, take a beach day, take a barbecue, take a day where you just go-karting. I mean, there's so many options, ways to build programs where you're able to kind of adapt this work-life integration and become actually more collaborative with your employees. Tip number 4, invest in your employees' growth. So why do career opportunities matter so much when it comes to engagement? Well, it goes back to my earlier point that the more invested your employees can be in your company as a whole, the more engaged they're going to be. And part of that that investment is, do they see a future for not just the company but themselves? How are they going to grow? How will their contributions be able to get bigger and better as the years go on? And as part of that study I mentioned earlier around where we evaluated the best places to work and sort of what key characteristics they had versus ones that were lower rated, we saw that career opportunities was the number 2 driver of satisfaction. That was more often rated as something that it matters to employees. And encompassing this is, do they have the tools they need to grow their career? Are they presented with learning opportunities? Is there a career growth path that's visible to them? And taking this a step further, leadership does matter. It matters not just in helping that employee get ahead or grow their career. It matters in the day-to-day. We found this stat that we thought was particularly interesting, that 1 in 2 employees has actually left their job to get away with a manager at some point in their career. And I don't know for those on the line, but that might resonate as true. Management matters. And we found in a Gallup study that managers account for roughly 70% of variance in employee engagement. You can't truly get away without evaluating the effectiveness of your team management and how that can affect those employees. Are the managers that you have or that you hire equipped with the tools they need to be successful? Gallup also said that nearly 1 in 10 people has that innate characteristic to be an effective manager, whereas 2 in 10 people don't quite have those innate characteristics, but with proper coaching and tools could be effective and therefore could inspire their teams better and could make sure that those employees have the tools they need and the support they need from their manager. And part of this involves coaching. We can't blame all of it on managers. Part of it is the managers need coaching. They need to be engaged as well. They need the tools and the resources and the support from leadership teams to also be effective. To know when an employee is disengaged, how can I help them? Is it something I can do as a manager? If they want to attend a leadership, a learning course, do we have the funds to do that? Can we support our employees in that way? At Glassdoor, we truly have a multifaceted approach to leadership and development, and it really starts from day 1. New hire orientation. We make it clear that people first, no matter what. Our people are our most important asset as a company, and as a new hire, you're part of that, and we want you to be successful. We sit all of our new hires down for a day, and we go through our company mission. You hear from various department leaders what they're doing to support that mission. We give various tools and trainings to new employees so that they feel that they have a good baseline, a good foundation. They know who to go to for particular questions. We've also done this buddy system where we pick someone on the team that new hire will be joining, and that buddy is responsible at least that first week and ideally the first 3 months to check in, to make sure that their buddy has the tools and gets the question answered that they need, that can kind of show them the ropes. We have a set educational budget that each department leader can work with his or her teammates to align. I was able to last week go attend the South by Southwest Interactive Conference with my educational budget. It was something that interested me. I was able to tell my manager that being able to learn and see how other brands are doing big marketing programs is important to me, and she worked with me to make that happen. Educational budget isn't unlimited, but part of that becomes down to the peer-to-peer accountability. If you have a particular budget, or that there's at least an agreement that they can pursue learning opportunities or ways to develop themselves, that they can explore that and that they're supported in that. And I think that's really important. We also solicit regular performance evaluations and 360-degree feedback. So it's not just you and your manager soliciting feedback on how you're doing and what you're happy about. We span that across other teams. Who else do you work with? What cross-functional teams do you work with? And how can you begin to build those relationships? One of the most important things I think we do is EQ training. I think that's the most directly related to employee engagement. And that basically means emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence training, excuse me. So what we think, and this is not a new concept or, just a Glassdoor concept by any means, this really spans the idea that if you're able to get to know who you work with on a more personal level, if you're able to kind of go beyond the, hi, how are you, coffee conversation, and actually know what drives your colleagues, what motivates them, what frustrates them, where do they want to grow in their career, you can have a better working relationship. You know where these people are coming from. You know those key drivers. And this emotional intelligence training is so important between a manager and his or her team. Being able to see how each person communicates and have that bond that can really increase engagement overall. And it at least equips you as a manager and employee to have difficult conversations. They will happen, and that could generally be a cause to create disengagement. If you're frustrated or if you feel upset about something, you didn't get the support you need, you could go into that dark place where you feel checked out and you've kind of given up. But with EQ training, and what we try to inspire here at Glassdoor is we want to give you the tools so that you can have that difficult conversation. You can let your manager know or your team know what frustrated you and why you felt that way. And that way you can have a more effective relationship. You can clear the air and actually move forward and get back to supporting that mission and the tasks that make you happy. So with that said, I'll kind of give a few examples, especially examples from Glassdoor, about how you can begin to measure and monitor and increase engagement throughout your organization. So we just want to wrap it up with a few key takeaways. So first takeaway, employee engagement impacts your bottom line. There's no way around it. We've seen it in studies. Deloitte has seen it in studies. Gallup has seen it. The more and more that your employees believe in what they're doing, believe in their leaders, feel personally and emotionally connected to your business's success, the more it's actually going to have an impact and help your business grow. Second one is we acknowledge it can be difficult to quantify this. These are feelings, these are people's emotions, these are people's internal drivers. But there are tools, many of which are free, to help you sort of measure and increase engagement. So going back to the earlier point, you can launch a free anonymous survey. Glassdoor is a tool at your disposal to sort of identify trends and monitor feedback. So there's lots of ways where you can get that baseline. And a lot of going back to those 5 key drivers, management, belief in leadership, work environment, those are free. Those are things that you can take a look at, revisit, create more transparency, all with things you already have in place. Creating visibility into your company's business objective, and be very clear how each employee and each department plays a role in that. Visibility matters. If they know what they're moving towards, they're going to do it all that much better. And consider those key drivers when you develop your strategy. So revisit. Go back to those 5 pillars. What are you doing exceptionally well? What areas haven't you addressed that maybe you could spend some time trying to dive into? And don't rely on just your gut feeling. Use the feedback that you've collected to help inform your strategy. Are there particular things that people are requesting more than others? Make sure that's a part of your strategy too. And lastly, revisit your learning and development programs regularly. There's constantly new tools or new trainers or new leaders coming into your company. So it's important to kind of revisit what's working and use feedback loops or surveys as a way to measure the success of these. Are your leaders getting what they need? Are your managers getting the training they need? Are new employees coming on? Do they have ideas about new training or development courses that you could be implementing? And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Q&A. I know we went through quite a bit of topics today, but thank you for your time, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Lauren, thank you so much for being here today. I think you've given us a great look at the importance of employee engagement and also shared some really great action steps that you've taken at Glassdoor and that hopefully our webcast attendees can think about implementing in their own organizations. We have had some questions come in over the course of the webcast, so I do want to get to as many of those as we can here in the few minutes that we have left. HCI members, if you haven't yet submitted any questions, I encourage you to do so now. You can do that in a couple of ways. One, you can enter those questions right there in the chat box. Just remember to include your name. You can also tweet questions with the hashtag HCI chat, and we will get those in queue also. So our first question that we have here for you, Lauren, relates back to that company mission. And this question asks, we're a young company and don't really have a mission. What advice do you have for when it comes to creating that mission for a company that's just starting out?
Great question. And I think this goes back to probably the leaders of this company, or at least people who have maybe been there since the beginning. Ask yourselves, why did you create this company? What was the goal that you had in mind? If it was to help widget Y work better so that, system X could move quicker, how does that go above and beyond? I guess I can use Glassdoor as an example. We always believe that transparency is important. It mattered back in the day when you were selecting a flight for a big trip, or it mattered when you were buying a home. So we always thought that being able to have transparency into what a job is going to be before you accept it, we thought that was important. And, the mission isn't just to create transparency into jobs. It's what are we trying to solve overall? And that's helping people find a job that they're going to love. So begin to ask yourself, maybe outline, what is it that you're striving to do? And how does that actually go above and beyond? Ask yourself, maybe a good way to do it is, well, we help, X, Y, Z. Well, but then what? What does X, Y, and Z do once you've helped them? And, kind of begin to grow that pyramid, and eventually you'll have sort of that big mission. Just always be asking yourself, but what next? But what more? What else are we doing, striving for? And that can eventually become your mission.
Great, thank you. Excellent thoughts there. Next question. This goes back to one of the big themes that you kind of carried through your presentation here is making sure that we are looking at feedback. Can you share a little bit more about how Glassdoor identifies trends in employee feedback, or how people who are using Glassdoor can identify trends in that feedback?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of built-in tools with the platform to begin to group and categorize feedback. We have word clouds on the back end that allow you to see, what topics have been mentioned more so than others, and you can actually click into those topics and see all the reviews that mention maybe work-life balance or something like that. And there's also easy ways to group the feedback by, say, satellite office, by location, by subsidiary, by department, by role. So there's a lot of quick ways that you can begin to group those trends. And part of it is just regularly monitoring it or working with other leaders in your organization. If you're on the HR team, you might be particularly interested in all of it, but maybe you can task your product team or your customer success team to kind of monitor the reviews in his or her department so that you can begin to be mindful and categorize and start seeing things that pop up more and more frequently.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. And this was, you talked about this kind of just towards the end of your presentation. Our next question asks, can you explain what EQ training is again and how Glassdoor achieves that or does that?
Absolutely. So EQ training is essentially emotional intelligence training. And the idea behind it is that when you're able to build a relationship that goes beyond just sort of that, I don't want to say shallow, but sort of very skin deep in a way. If you're able to go establish relationships that go beyond just the day-to-day with your coworkers, meaning you actually know where they came from, what inspires them, what are they passionate about, what frustrates them. If you can begin to build that relationship, you can also build that compassion and that respect for your colleague. And that actually helps you to be more effective. Rather than getting upset because someone didn't deliver the task on time. Maybe you realize, you go over and ask them and say, I realize you didn't deliver this on time. And then they can maybe say, look, my dog had to go to the doctor and I just didn't get enough sleep and I'm really sorry. And that's kind of a silly example, but it really is just being able to respect one another and create relationships that are based on actual friendship in a way and camaraderie, then I need the task done and I need your help with it. We do this at Glassdoor. We actually have a moderator that we've worked with for years, and he will fly out. He lives in Arizona, and he'll fly out once a month, and he will go through this 2-day training with all of our new Glassdoorians, as we call them, and he'll go through this, how to build those relationships, how to handle tough conversations, how to better collaborate cross-functionally with your managers throughout your team. He even does this training with our leaders quite frequently. So there's a lot of platforms or courses or even trainers that you can use to explore this, and I think it's really worthwhile, and it makes feedback and it makes monitoring engagement so much more effective when you're able to build these relationships.
Absolutely, I agree. Next question here. The question is, we don't have any set programs around mentorship or coaching. Do you have any tips on how to encourage mentorship in our organization?
Absolutely. I think it truly stems from the top down. Your leaders should be mindful, or hopefully are mindful, of the next generation of leaders, the leaders that they bring in, the managers that they hire. At Glassdoor, we bring this into our hiring process. We don't just look for someone who can do the job and do it well. We look for aspiring leaders. We look for people who have shown how they've collaborated well with other team members, or how they've led a new idea to the finish line. We think it's important to kind of look for those qualities up front. Going back to my slide where I mentioned the study Gallup did around those innate characteristics of managers, yes, 1 in 10 just has what it takes, but 2 out of 10 can be coached and can be supportive to get there, and that's probably the bulk of us. So how we do this is we look for it in our hiring, we look for it in our leaders, we look for it in our review process. So we're constantly encouraged by our leaders or managers to say, hey, are you a new leader? Are you a new manager? Why don't you meet with a manager on a different department or multiple managers on different departments? What do they do? How do they conduct their one-on-ones? How do they solicit feedback from the team? How do they give back? How do they give feedback to their team members? We really inspire that sort of peer-to-peer collaboration to be effective. Some of the other programs that we've developed, we're constantly evaluating new management tools or training courses. I believe right now we're using a tool called Jhana that allows us to kind of categorize and group all different resources, how to use Excel, how to have a difficult conversation, how to solicit feedback in a respectful way. There's there's plenty of either platforms, tools, free resources that you can use to kind of build a program that supports your managers, enables your leaders to kind of train the managers on how to conduct business or be an effective manager. I hope that kind of answers that question there.
Absolutely. I think that you gave some great detail there, so we appreciate that. It looks like we have come to the end of our material for today, but I do want to encourage everyone to continue this discussion on Twitter. We have lots of tweets going on with our hashtags HCI Chat and GD Chat as well. You can also take a look at Human Capital Summit and any other upcoming HCI events by clicking the Attend a Conference link at the top of this page. I do want to say one more thank you to our featured speaker today, Lauren McNiff, and also thank you to everyone at Glassdoor for making this webcast possible. And of course, the biggest thank you of all goes out to all of our HCI members. We appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to spend with us and look forward to seeing all of you on another webcast soon. Thanks again and have a great day.